Welcome back to So Basically Everyone, a podcast hosted by The Black Maria Show and Pronouns. For this episode, we are bringing something from our vault of secrets. We have the live episode from Live from Tau Talks available for you to check it out and listen to the amazing conversation that we had back in March of this year. The conversation centered around allyship, particularly to the BIPOC and queer community, and of course, the Black Maria Show and I shared a lot more about our experiences as cis queer women of color. We invite you to take a listen, enjoy the episode, check out what our live episode format was like, check out what our conversation was all about, and let us know what you think in our comments or our inbox. Without further ado, enjoy!
Is about queer stories, our bond sisterhood, and our blunt, semi-filtered thoughts because we need to keep our jobs, okay? If at any time you agree with what we are saying, like snaps or hand claps, please use the reaction section. And trust, we will let you know which reaction to use before we begin each segment of the event. So make sure you pay close attention.
That's right. We want you all to feel as a part of this episode as much as possible. And if this is your first time listening to us, welcome. This is, again, a live episode. So it's not a lecture. It's not going to be, a class or anything like that. You're basically going to listen to Maria and I talk the way that we do when we record our episodes. We will be releasing the audio from tonight's conversation. So we invite you to listen to our previous episodes as well as future ones after tonight. I will go ahead and reintroduce myself. My name is Gabby. I also go by Pronouns. I am a student affairs professional, a coffee lover. I'm a dedicated homebody, and I absolutely love pineapple on pizza.
Did y'all hear what she said? Anyway, my name is Maria, and I'm also the other co-host. My IG handle is at The Black Maria Show. That's me. I am a planetarium event coordinator, also an antisocial extrovert, an aspiring dominatrix. Okay, that's me. And I believe that pineapple doesn't belong on pizza. Yeah.
Well, haters gonna hate, am I right?
You know what? I think it's time for a theme music, okay? Here we go. I'm gonna have to play it this way. All right, we had to get that little intro in just for y'all. That is our theme music. But anyways, back to the matter at hand. We're just gonna ignore what she said about putting pineapples on pizza.
All right. We definitely do have better things to talk about. We were invited here for a specific reason. So let's hear more about it.
Okay, yes, we are. You're very right about that. First of all, we want to do a huge thank you for our amazing sisters at Timeless Tau Chapter for inviting us to present on this topic. And also we want to thank the audience for coming along for the ride as well, because it's going to be a fun one, okay? So audience, like we mentioned before, we want to ensure that you have your time to shine. So if you have any questions at any time, please write them down or put them in the chat and we will answer them at the end during the Q&A, like Elise mentioned earlier. Now, a disclaimer with that is we will ask you to read your question. We're creating a safe space, so this is a time for you to be open as we will be open with you as well, okay?
For sure. Again, even though this is a live episode and technically we only talk to each other up until the Q&A, we want you to feel as part of the conversation as much as possible. Use your reaction button and use your chat wisely during this time. Our episode today is going to be about our favorite topic of them all, which is allyship. Particularly, we're going to be sharing with you all what allyship is and what it means to us through our lens and our perspective as queer cis women of color. We're going to be presenting to you all an exclusive, a brand new segment, the first time that we feature that before. And I think we have a lot to cover, so we should just get right into it. Let's keep in mind our community agreements and let's have fun while we learn some new things, shall we?
Yes, we shall. So let's get started. It is time for another edition of Queer Chronicles. In this segment, we basically just talk about gay stuff, but in particular, we'll be sharing our coming out stories with all of you. Like we stated before, this is your time to use a reaction. So in this section, in this segment, please use the Tau party celebration reaction if anything resonates with you, okay? So, spring streamers. Do you want to go ahead and start us off?
Yeah, let's get started. So we've shared a lot about, our experience as queer women, but we wanted to share with you all more about the story of actually coming out and what that process was like. And for me, I have shared this before. Coming out is a quite recent experience. I came out in 2017 when I began dating my current partner. And I think when we were preparing to talk about it and to share our story, one of the questions that Maria posed was like, who was the first person that you came out to? And for me, the answer to that really was myself. I had a hunch, right? We talked about this. I found women beautiful all the time, and I found people beautiful all the time. But really, I think realizing that it's attraction, right? That's a little bit different than just thinking or seeing somebody's beauty. That had to happen to myself, and that happened when I finally kind of found someone that I was like, oh no, we're gonna do this, right?
Take a chance.
Yes, we're gonna go for it. We're gonna let it be known. I had a small group of friends, and it was almost as I introduced my new relationship, I was introducing my identity as well, right? Because it was the first time that I had dating a woman. I think that I didn't feel like it was a ritual or a ceremony or anything until I had to tell my family, and particularly my mom. I also say this, right? But by default, coming out to my mom, and I came out to my family. It's like, hey, I'm gay, pass it on. And she did. So we really only had to have that conversation once. And the most memorable piece of it all is just really understanding and being able to answer the questions that came up. My mom had questions, and I did the best that I could, the when, the how, the why, and you try to provide your most honest answers. But I also think of particularly having to tell my younger brother. At the time, I believe he was around 11 years old, and he was starting getting to this place where he kept asking me when I was going to get married and when I was going to find a husband. And his idea and what he had seen, from me in relationships before led him to just automatically ask me when are you going to get a husband? And I remember taking him to walk our dog one time after I had already told my mom that I had a girlfriend. And I just remember asking him hey, remember how you keep asking me when I'm going to get a husband? And he's like, yeah. I was like, well, I have a girlfriend. He's like, oh, all right. And my biggest thing, again, he was 11 at the time. I was like, do you have any questions? Do you understand what that means? And it was really just so beautiful that somebody so young, his answer was yeah, it's people, right? So people love people. So you love your girlfriend.
Love that.
That's exactly it. Right. So it's, I'm very fortunate that I felt fortunate, but also at times worried that, I know we have this culture of silence in my family. We love and we preserve our relationships because we don't tell each other everything. And I think I say that, right? If anybody's upset, if anybody doesn't like my identity, they don't tell me. And at least I prefer that over, potentially knowing that I have to, with my family, reconsider my relationship because of my identity, right? So I do share the fact that, my family was open and was understanding, and I also still make choices around people in my life that don't know, right? I love my grandma, but she don't need to know. She don't need to know. So we just, we make choices, we compromise, we find out what works best for us. So that's a little bit about my journey. Some things that I haven't shared before on the podcast. But Maria, tell us a little bit about yours and your experience.
Yeah. You don't gotta know, it's fine.
No.
Well, I went through my journey of coming out and officially coming out in 2014. So, I'm not a newbie anymore, not new in this game. But in true queer and lesbian fashion, I married the first woman I dated. Can we say U-Haul? If you know, you know. So that was definitely me. I came out to my sister first, to my older sister, who was honestly like my therapist, mini therapist for that journey, because I was freaking out that I even liked a woman. And so she was more so like, well, so they have a cool personality. Like, do you think they're cute? Like, she was asking me the normal questions you would ask a person, but I was just so surprised she was so supportive right away. And then honestly, the second person I came out to was myself. I think coming out to myself was the hardest part for me, because I was 21 at the time. But so for 20 years, I really thought I got a grasp of understanding who I was, and then boom, plot twist. So that was definitely a process for me to get through. And also because of my cultural background, I didn't tell either of my parents until a year into my relationship. And even then, I only told my mom first, right? Like my mom was the only one that knew, because mom's down. Call me down best friend, right? But she didn't even really process it until she met my girlfriend during like a holiday break. We had a holiday party, like family gathering, and that's where she met her. And at then she kind of was like, well, we've all have sinned, and I understand because I'm a sinner too. That was definitely her initial approach, but now she's definitely done a complete 180 time, and she is definitely supportive. When it comes to my dad, so when it came to my dad, I didn't tell him until I was already married. And even at that point, I just told him that I had a girlfriend. Like, he didn't know I had a different last name. There's paperwork attached to it. Yeah, all that. Who needs to know that? What? But honestly, I was really, really scared that I was going to lose my relationship with my dad. And I thought that he would never talk to me again, like literally disown me just because of the, cultural upbringing. But when I told him, my dad, because of his, religious background, he just said that I had a demon in me and that it needed to be released. So once he, told that to me, I guess that was his way of just communicating how he really felt. And we just went past there. And like, we still talk now, but it's definitely not the same. And relationships are not on the table at all. But luckily, at the time when everything did happen, I was living away from home, and I had a great support system and my friends and my sorority sisters, and that honestly became my family away from home, and that supported me so much and just made me feel comfortable on my own that I just, kept moving forward, living my life in that way. So it worked out.
Yeah, I think when preparing and when thinking about our journeys, one of the things that we discuss in similar but also in very different ways, understanding that at some point when you come out, particularly around being queer, you have to think for a moment and prepare for the potential of people in your life to no longer be okay with being in your life. And not only that, right, but for some pretty important people to make that decision, especially when we talk about parents. And I think we also shared in our conversations of like, we, in some levels, are still lucky that our families choose to be around, right? Regardless of how supportive or not supportive that they may be, the reality is that some people do have to at some point end those relationships, and or the other parties don't want to have those relationships anymore with their kids because they're queer. So recognizing, right, that there's a certain level of a process for our families to go through as well. And, it doesn't always end in a place in which you can have a decent relationship, right? Or a civil relationship. And that's something very real for a lot of folks.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I've had to help a few people move out their homes because their parents kicked them out or they didn't approve and they were going to financially support them anymore. So that's, it's a struggle sometimes and it's definitely a journey and having to, I guess, to go through a detox and withdrawal from family. That's definitely a hard thing to get over.
for sure. And another piece that was shared in your story, Maria, was doing so with a chosen family, right? Like a sorority is for us. And that's also another thing or another layer to our experience. And really, I think Maria supported a lot of us, Pi chapter particularly. And we've shared this before, but I think I feel indebted for the space that Maria was able to create for all of us because, we've all at some point or another either been in college or are currently in college right now. And joining a sorority, it's just such a gendered experience, right? I mean, in itself, sororities and fraternities uphold the gender binary in many ways. And so then to be in those spaces, but to be different than the rest of your sisters, that's something that, if you lined up every queer Zekai from Pi chapter in the order that we came out to Maria and then therefore to each other, I would say I'm probably like third in line, but nevertheless, I'll be ready with my commission because we had that moment when we had this, like, it was like the Spider-Man meme when you're just like, right? And I remember we were in your apartment, I was in your
Yeah.
room, and I think I made a comment about one of your friends that I was like, oh, I find them really, really attractive. And somebody else agreed. And I was like, oh, wait, do you? Do you? And then we were like, oh, we
You,
all, oh, Maria, because you brought us all together. I'd love to hear what it was like for you to be the first one really in a big chapter of a sorority to come out as queer and to bring your partner around. What was that like?
okay, first of all, that I wish I could have been in like third person and took a picture of when we were in the room doing that because it was priceless and I just thought it was so cute. I just wanted everybody to have that moment together as a unit, a support system. So
Yes.
I was terrified, honestly. I didn't see that before on campus. At least my eyes weren't aware of it. I weren't open to that world yet. So I was really nervous. And honestly, I started dating my wife at the time. I started dating her right after I crossed into my organization. So I was really nervous. I didn't know how to deal with it, but it was definitely an interesting and funny journey. I was initially terrified, like I mentioned, and really, really scared to tell sisters because at the time, a lot of our sisters were, dating men, of course, getting married, having babies, like doing the full shebang, the full standard hetero, process. So
Yep.
right after I crossed, I went to a bridal shower for three of our sisters. Like we had a big bridal shower for all three of them.
Yep.
So
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, this is just the normal. So I'm not normal in here. And then I was also really, really nervous, like Gabby mentioned, to introduce my partner to my sisters. My biggest concern was just that everyone was going to respect each other in the situation. Because, for me, I'm like, I'm going to go hard for my sisters, but I'm also going to go hard for my relationship. So I'm like, I'm really hoping these don't, hit hard against each other because I don't know which way I'm going to go. It's really, really hard. But luckily, it went really, really well. And yeah, so it was a great day instead of being a bad one, which I was trying to prepare myself for. I don't
Yeah.
really know why I was doing that.
Well, I think one of the reasons, if it sounds to some of y'all like, what? Why would it be a big deal to like be queer and be in college? We're talking about a few years ago, and the conversation has advanced so long. I think at the time it was about not knowing whether you know your own sisters were gonna not be accepting of you because you don't, again, we weren't queer before, we weren't out before, right? So it wasn't anything that was like as upfront as possible. And I think with the piece that you talked about, like whether they were going to be accepting of our partner, there was two layers of that, right? There was the layer of like, are you going to be accepting of me because I'm queer? But also, how
Mhm.
are you going to be treating my partner? Because I don't know if, you've been around queer folks, like you just didn't know those pieces around each other. And the most beautiful thing was realizing that it was really just about the fact that our sisters loved us and
Mhm.
wanted us to be with somebody who treated us well. I think, but that's something that we didn't know until we shared. So I definitely remember the protectiveness being there for sure. I know you're
Yeah.
lying, sisters.
Oh, for sure. I think the funniest thing was this is the sweetest thing. For every sister that came to me and like basically, came out to me, which I was really excited to have that privilege with them, they all like took me to like a secret place. Like the first sister took me to the library, we were doing homework, and then she was just like, hey, and then just told me, and I started laughing because I thought it was so cute. And I was like, okay, like why would you treat this any different from anyone else you were dating, And then the second sister, we were like in the car, like I was dropping her home or something like that. And it was just really funny just how the different situations came up, but they're all, very like sentimental in their own way, but they were just like, I need to tell you. And I thought that was the cutest thing. I thought that was cute. I was like, if I'm your safe space, I will be your safe space. I promise.
You were for a lot of us. Again, she'll be making a lot of money, y'all. Her piggy bank would be full if we all paid. Let's see. Do you want to move us on to the next part?
Yeah, I think we should finally get into it, right? For real, for real.
I
You
think
kind of
so.
know about us now. We finally set the rapport with y'all, so we're all a family at this point, okay? So we're definitely going to transition into our one-time segment. This segment is basically to contextualize our conversation and make sure we are all on the same page before we dig deeper. Okay. So this segment is called The Basics, and Chronologic is going to take it away and lead us down that path.
Yes. So the basics is a short, super quick segment. It's going to be like a speed round where we're going to be cover some basic topics. We need to be understanding of the concepts that I'm going to present in order to understand the conversation we're going to have later on. So let's start. The first one, we're going to start with gender. And the big thing that we want you all to know about gender is that we reject the gender binary around here, which means that we recognize that gender is fluid and that while historically people have either been categorized as men or women, gender goes beyond the binary, and that includes gender fluid folks, gender queer folks, non-binary, and others. And that's sort of like a basic rule that we need to understand in order to understand the rest of the topics today. The next thing is sexual orientation. A lot of people get these two mixed up. Gender has nothing to do with your sexual orientation. Your gender identity does not correlate to who you're attracted to. And at the end of the day, really, all that your sexual orientation is who you trying to, you know, who you're trying to get into it with. Other than that,
At the end of the day.
at the end of the day, gender really just speaks to how you like to present yourself, how you like to express yourself, and your gender identity. Sexual orientation is whose number are you trying to get at the end of the night? Or dating preferences, if we want to call it that. The third thing that we need to recognize is that cisgender privilege is real. It's really important to understand what it means. And the basic thing about cisgender is that it's super simple. If you express as the gender of the sex that you were assigned at birth, then you are cisgender. For example, for myself, when I was born, the doctors were like, well, she looks like a woman, she's a woman. And then when I grew into my own person, I was like, you know what? Yep, I am. I'm a cisgender woman. And that's not the journey for everybody. The biggest thing to understand around cisgender privilege, too, is that society likes it when you do identify with the sex that you were assigned at birth, and they don't necessarily like it when you disrupt that binary, and it's why it's a privilege. It's because society accepts it when you are that way or when you identify that way, but it does not approve necessarily of trans or non-binary identities. And the next concept, we're also going to try to do a quick little speed round, but I'm going to hop this one on to Maria for her to tell us more about.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So another part of the basics is talking about intersectionality. And I'm hoping all of you have heard that word before, even if you're not understanding of, the definition of how that really works. So just to give you some background, it was a term coined by the amazing Kimberly Crenshaw back in 1989. So this has been some time, right? Intersectionality has been around for a while. Crenshaw is a law professor and a social theorist, so they got the credentials, y'all. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and give you a fancy definition of intersectionality, and then if you don't understand that, because I didn't when I read it, we're going to break it down what it really means. So this is from the Oxford Dictionary. So the definition of intersectionality is an interconnected nature and social categorization such as race, class, and gender, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. So if you're like, okay, what did you really say? Let's talk about it. I can help you with that right now, okay? So intersectionality, excuse me. Here we go. Intersectionality is basically a lens you see through which you experience society. So it's kind of like a crossroads between your race, nationality, sexual orientation, gender identity, economic status, and the list can go on and on. Trust me, it can. So just like Gabby did before, I'm going to go ahead and give you an example. So for myself, I am a Black West Indian American queer cis woman raised in a low income area who is also able-bodied and college educated. Now, these are some of the identities that I am comfortable with, but with these identities, I have to remember that some of them have historic oppression while others are inherited or acquired. Okay, so that's something you want to think about. And in that notion of intersectionality, we have to remember and recognize that all unique experiences of identity, more importantly, the ones have been multiple overlapping of oppression, are valid. Okay, we need to let people speak for themselves and listen up. Okay.
The next thing about intersectionality that I think it's also important to mention is that the reason why we're bringing it up is because you'll hear us lean a lot and talk a lot about our queerness, but that doesn't mean that our experiences and that what we're sharing isn't rooted in our intersectional experience. Because as you know from the title of today's event, we're talking about allyship towards queer folks and the BIPOC community, and we are a part of both of those. So sometimes our conversation leans into just sounding like we're talking about queerness, but it may be important for you to think about that if you're a queer person that maybe shares a different racial or ethnic identity than we do, your experience might be just a little bit different. So that's something that's important to note about intersectionality as well. So that wraps up the basics, and we are now ready to move on into our brand new segment.
Ooh, what is it? What is it? What is it? What is it? Tell them.
I think I hear a little something something. We're
What?
taking it back. We're taking it back. I heard a bell ring. We're
Oh,
in Saturday school right now.
I'm trying to do a school bell.
I don't even remember what it sounds like. We hope y'all think this was just as cool as we did when we came up with it, because we were psyched, y'all.
Yeah.
We were psyched, okay?
Amped.
Absolutely. Really, the spirit behind Saturday school is, very much rooted Breakfast Club inspiration all the way. Saturday School is a segment that teaches us all the things that we should have learned probably in a classroom. But thanks to the American education system, we're learning it in a podcast, okay? Y'all know the way that thing is set up. We're not going to really get into that. But during Saturday School, from this point forward, we really hope to bring some more research-driven, data-driven knowledge and education and awareness to share with you all so that we can have some of those lessons that perhaps we didn't get to have, in our schools or in whichever settings we're meant to educate us, but maybe didn't really fully get right to it. So
Exactly.
we're gonna talk about allyship. For this segment, we're switching up the reaction. Thank you all for all the party. We learned it's called a ta-da reaction.
Yeah, the ta-da.
So thank you for that. We're gonna go ahead and switch it up for Saturday School. If you listen to something that catches your attention, you're learning something new, or you just want to hype up a comment that we make, please go ahead and use the hand clap emoji. This is the meat of our episode today, and we're going to start talking about In order to fully understand what allyship is, we figured let's start with what allyship is not.
What it's not, okay? What it's not.
Yes, you can't really, it's one of those concepts that you can't really understand what it is until you understand and or become aware of things that it is not. So let's go ahead and get us started. Maria, can you share with us one thing that allyship is not?
Oh, of course. Okay, first of all, super excited about this. Been waiting to do this all my life. If you're on TikTok and they had this as a thing, as a stitch, I'd be like, I've been waiting for this one, like the Lizzo reference. If anybody's on TikTok, I'm addicted to TikTok, so you feel me. Okay, but definitely, let's go ahead and get into it. So one thing that I constantly see people do is make progressive assumptions, okay? You don't have to show off what you know or have learned about queer folks. So for example, if you're a straight person attending a Pride event, you don't have to automatically say yes, queen, to everything to fit in, okay? If you know that I'm queer and we're having a conversation, it doesn't automatically have to be a kiki. Okay, we don't have to kiki everything. And if you see me and you're like, oh, I know Maria's queer, and if I look amazing, thank you, right? It doesn't automatically mean that it has to be a fierce thing. I'm fierce or I'm having a slay, I'm slaying things off today. That's not, we don't automatically have to do that. You can just say I look great and keep it pushing, okay? So we're going to get a little more into that, but these shouldn't automatically be terms you go to just because you're assuming or how someone identifies or their orientation, okay? So just something to think about as we move along. And Gabby, can you tell us one thing that it is not?
Yeah, I did want to add a little comment to what you just said because it made me think of, those like Twitter like comments we see all the time of
Yeah,
people just really wanting to put to knowledge like what they've learned in like a training or a workshop or something.
yeah.
But remembering that just because you gain certain knowledge doesn't mean that now you get to assume about the queer experience because you read about it. You know,
Right.
just that's not what it is. So just gotta get that out there. The second thing that allyship is not is to demand education, and I see this one also on social media all the time.
Constantly.
You see somebody who has either a lived experience or the credentials to talk about and share an opinion on Twitter, and folks want to challenge it. And when they are
Mhm.
asked to go educate themselves, they're like, well, why can't you just tell me? You're starting the conversation. Why can't you educate me? And you literally will see a lot of the times folks with privileged identities be like, well, educate me. I'm here. You do not get to do that. That is actually not allyship. I mean, you can do that. You might choose to do that. If you do that to me, you're not going to get a response. But true allies do not demand to be educated by queer folks. And you also don't get to do that under this disguise that it's your attempt to be educating yourself or to become more aware, and or because you want to learn from an authentic or direct source. If you do want to do that, then you pay people. Okay, then you
Right.
pay people. So compensate folks for their labor, for their knowledge, and for what they're sharing with you. Because being an ally does not mean that you get to demand the community you want to be an ally for to educate you on their experience. That's not how it works out.
Right. That's just not how it works. That's not how any of that works.
Mm-mm. What's the next one?
Oh, yes. This one comes up consistently in definitely college classrooms, but just in any discussion, debate people have when they're going back and forth about a certain topic is playing devil's advocate. Number one, the devil doesn't need an advocate. He's fine. Okay. If you believe in him, he's fine. Okay. If you haven't heard that phrase before, to kind of help you get a better understanding, is we basically are saying that we don't need a debater to create hypothetical scenarios that continue to normalize homophobia, transphobia, and so forth. Okay. We have to have these open dialogues and making sure that we're having honest opinions and communicating.
For sure, for sure. The biggest thing about playing devil's advocate too is that it really just again normalizes arguments that we are trying to unpack and that we're trying to really what's it called when you demystify when you prove a myth wrong? What's the
Yeah. Debunk.
debunk? Debunk. There we go. These are ideologies and concepts that we're trying to stop. So when you hear in it, particularly in like an educational setting, somebody that wants to see what you think just to play devil's advocate, that is not being an ally. That is not encouraging conversation. That is actually normalizing homophobia in many, many very wrong ways.
Very much so.
And the next piece that allyship is not is tokenizing. And this one can get very blurry for a lot of folks. And in trying to contextualize it, to who's in our call today, just because you have a queer friend or an employee or a member of your organization, it doesn't mean that now they're the spokespersons for all things queer. Okay, so thinking about some of y'all who are leaders of student organizations, you have to be in tune with who your members are and when do you highlight your queer members. Are you only showcasing your queer members during Pride Month? Or are you only asking them to talk about their experience as queer folks, right? Those might be some things that you want to think about, and how can you take and see your members as a whole and not just for their queerness, right? And for those of us who are professionals in that same way, whenever, you're in a department or in a team setting and you have representation and you start getting representation, you have to remember that when we apply an intersectional perspective, not everybody's queer experience is the same. So you don't get to ask, and you shouldn't ask, that one queer person on your team to run all things gay, because the reality is that they're not going to have a true knowledge and awareness of all of it, because we all have various different experiences. So we really, really want to make sure that you navigate that carefully, that you navigate centering folks and uplifting folks very carefully from tokenizing and using someone's identity as sort of the only way or the only thing that you see as contributions to your organization or your team.
Definitely. And one more, I say one more.
Oh my gosh. This was not a planned conversation.
Okay. I'll stop. I'll calm down. But last but not least, allyship is not a trend. It is more than just putting a hashtag in your bio or putting up a social justice symbol while it's trending. I mean, for example, how many of you know someone that had hashtag Black Lives Matter or BLM or hashtag Trans Lives Matter or etc. magically appear in their bios, and then all of a suddenly they disappeared now after the time being, okay? The injustices and oppression that marginalized groups are facing isn't just something you can just throw away. It is still happening whether or not it's in your bio or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Definitely allyship is not a trend. You're so right about that. I think, so we've shared with you all, those are the things that allyship are not. We're going to talk about some things that allyship is. And to talk about this, we're going to be using an acronym from the British Columbia Teachers Federation, or the BCTF. Apparently Canada has all the good things. So they had amazing resources that we just wanted to share with you all. So if you're interested in seeing the full version of the content that we're going to be sharing with you all, you can head over to www.bctf.ca to see a little bit more. This organization is a union essentially for all public school teachers in this particular area. And they have amazing handouts and things that are super easy to understand, easy to learn. And that's the acronym that we're going to be sharing with you all. So at this point, if you're taking notes, take your pens and pencils down. And Maria, can you break down the acronym for us?
Yes, I think it is only right that we use an acronym to help you remember it a little better as we go along. So the word today, folks, it is ally. Okay, so ALLY, just to make sure, we're all on our spelling tip right now. But A is action. So we're going to be discussing that. L is for listening. Open ears, folks, open ears. L is for learning, because when you listen, hopefully you're learning. And then Y is for yielding. So we're going to be talking about action, listening, learning, and yielding. I like saying it like that, yielding. Gabby, hit us with the action. What we going
Yes, action is pretty self-explanatory, right? But one of the best things to understand, or best ways to think about allyship, is that it is a verb. you can't just identify as an ally. You can't just be an ally. It's not something that you can be or that you can become. It's something that you do and that you practice. And sometimes I hear about this when we're talking about like leadership. And there was this concept that I once talked about of like leadershiping. That's the same thing with allyship. There's an ing at the end, which means it's active. There's action. You are not a bystander when you see situations, of course, to whatever level of safety you have guaranteed for yourself. But you also stand in solidarities when you witness certain situations, and or you just have an ongoing commitment to having action-based ways of being engaged with the communities that you want to advocate for. So action is in the name. You do things. You do them constantly, you do them ongoing, consistently, and it's a long-term commitment. Kind of like, those long-term commitments we avoid. We can do that to this one. Not if we're trying to be a true ally. Not if we're trying to be a true ally.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so the next one, after action, we are listening. So encompassing in listening is respecting the boundaries and wishes of the queer loved ones that you know of, okay? So that's a 3-part section I'm going to break down to you. So A is honoring if and when someone wants or doesn't want to disclose their identities with other people. It is not your place to open up that information to other folks around you, or if someone wants to keep that to themselves, that is their opinion. That's their opinion and their decision. B is respecting pronouns, okay? If the people are letting you know how they identify themselves, then please refer to them as that. Like my name is Maria, so I would hope she referred to me as Maria, not Mariah, not Marie. And it goes the same thing with pronouns, okay? And in that, encompassed in respecting people's pronouns, the default isn't always gonna be they or them. We actually have folks that might just go by their name, and that's how you refer to them. Maria's over there, give this to Maria. So we have to remember that there's more into just learning queerness and inclusive language. There's depth to that as well. And last but not least, you know how folks say, treat others how you want to be treated? Scratch that. We're going to treat others how they want to be treated. We don't assume around here. We have to ask. We have to step up and ask. That's all part being an ally. So don't we all love consent? The same thing goes for this as well too, okay? So we need to ask, we don't assume, all right? So we're honoring, we're respecting, and we're treating others how they want to be treated, and that's all encompassed in listening.
Yes, for sure. I think a story or an example that may be helpful to think about is a lot of the times folks who are very well-intentioned will be like, okay, well, what happens if I mess up? Or what happens when I misgender somebody or I use the wrong pronoun, right? And how do I like bounce back from that? That's a perfect example of a situation in which there's no 1, 2, 3 on how to do that, because it depends. It depends on who you did that to, who you did that with, in what setting. And it's why it's important to normalize the conversations that we're having, because that's how you get to just very quickly know and ask somebody, my apologies, like, what can I do? Right? Some people want you to say sorry and keep it moving. Some people want to know that you're truly sorry. And some people don't care. They just want you to use the right pronoun. But you don't get to decide. And you don't get to say, I went to that one workshop. They said I should do it this way. So this is how I'm going to do it to everybody. That's not how that works. That's not how that works. And it ties to the next L in our acronym, which is learning. You have to be engaged and you have to really take control of your ongoing education. And as we mentioned earlier, take it upon funding that own education on your own. Google is free. There's so many things out there.
Get it while you can. Get it while you can. We don't know how.
Get it while it is. Listen, get it while. I know they're about to do something. Google's gonna turn into something much larger than we ever wanted it to. But in the meantime, we're going to take advantage of that and of all the resources, and really in whichever way that you need to receive information, right? Some of us, I think about this after going to grad school, I never want to read an article again. I just don't. So if articles are not your that's a-okay. You can find ebooks, you can find podcasts, YouTube videos. But also, if you feel like, you know what, no, I need the most reliable of the sources, then find queer scholars and scholars of color through Google Scholar as well. But the main thing here is for you to be in charge of your ongoing education, to take responsibility, and actually a pretty big thing for all of you to be proud of and considerate of is that if you are here at this event, or if you're listening this episode willingly, then you're already practicing allyship. Emphasis on willingly, okay?
Right.
Then you're definitely practicing allyship, particularly if you're not queer or if you're not part of the BIPOC community. So besides that, really at this point, anything is free game as long as you're educating yourself with some reliable sources and with centering the communities that you're wanting to learn about. So Maria, why don't you bring it home with the why in ally? What does that mean?
All right, I'm gonna bring it home for all the folks at home, which is all of us. So last but not least, it is yielding. We're going to yield. You see how that rolls off the tongue? Yield, okay? So this is just a reminder that as allies, we do not center ourselves in our allyship. There's no savior complex around here, okay? And I hope some of y'all know what that is. So instead, you yield. We make room for the voices and advocacy efforts of the marginalized communities that you're an ally to. It's not just an action piece, that also how we go about the action, being careful not to speak on or on behalf of groups we have no business speaking for. We act, we listen, we learn, and we yield. You already knew what's coming. You know what's coming. So just a reminder, because we love to cite our sources, right? So this came from the British Columbia Teachers Federation, BCTF, in Canada. And honestly, Canada really just dropped gems. We looked more into this and what they had, and they had awesome resources and tips and things like that. But they were dropping gems. And just to let you know, fun fact, since we're on the topic of Canada, I did not know that they are responsible for creating Franklin and the Berenstain Bears. And now that I know that, I'm like, so you basically funded my childhood. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your work and efforts. I appreciate you. Okay. Like,
yeah.
Hey, it's Franklin. Come on, Franklin.
I think we're really just finding out that Canada has all the good things. They have the healthcare situation going on. You know, they have one of your favorite shows from your childhood. They have, you know, the Canadian bacon that goes with the pineapple on the pizza. They really just, and they have allyship. They just got it
out. We didn't even have to bring that up. We didn't have to bring up the pineapple on the pizza.
I thought we were talking about Canada.
It doesn't belong.
Okay,
Someone tell her.
I saw pineapple on the chat earlier, so it sounds like my statement was endorsed. But you know what? We're going to get to that later. If you want to tell us whether you believe pineapple belongs in pizza or not, you will have an opportunity to do so. So keep listening. But
because I'm going to take a tally. I'm doing a survey. This is
research.
Okay, you know, I just feel like people are really understanding where I'm coming from, and I love that. I feel like I
saw the emojis earlier. I
have a family in this space. I just want to say that. Okay, great.
See? Okay. See? Folks listening right now are like not here are probably like, what's going on? The chat is popping up. I see pineapples. I'm happy. Anyways. See?
Wow. You know what? Continue on. I don't even know how we got here because we can go on and on.
Thank you, Canada.
Go on and on continuously.
See, all right. We're just gonna jump back on track to our agenda. Let's reel it in. We really have a challenge for all of you. After listening to kind of the pieces that we've shared so far, and remembering allyship is action, we invite you to really think about, like, what are some tangible goals that you can set for yourself in order to be a better ally. And you can do a quick self-assessment. We love to be aware and be in tune with ourselves. You can ask yourself 3 things. The first question is, what can you start doing to demonstrate allyship? The second question is, what should you stop doing? Maybe some of the examples in the earlier section where we shared what allyship is not. You heard some things that you're like, ooh, I've done that. Maybe time to identify one and commit to stop doing that. And then the third one is, what will you continue to do? Again, being in the space is already an act of allyship. So what are some other things in your life that you do that you want to continue to do in order to be a better ally? And think about those, sit with those, and later, if we have some time, we would love to hear from you all what your challenges are. So yeah.
So we are asking you to start, stop, and continue. You got it? Start, stop, continue. All right.
Yeah, I feel like there's plenty social work students or social workers in the call to be like, oh, I heard that one before.
All right. Does it resonate with you? Forget to yield. Yield. Okay. I'm a dancer, y'all, so it feels right. It feels right. So although we did give you an acronym, we also wanted to provide an official definition of allyship. So we did, do some research. We checked Oxford Dictionary and of course Webster's Dictionary and all that good stuff, multiple dictionaries, honestly. But the reality is the best definition that we found that hit home for us was Wikipedia's. So, I mean, I don't know if any of y'all can relate that, in college or if you're attending college right now, possibly Wikipedia saved your life a few times. So I thought it'd be right. It felt right to use it. So we're going to go ahead and give Wikipedia's definition because it just felt right at home for us, like I mentioned. So allyship is the practice of emphasizing social justice, inclusion, and human rights by the members of an in-group to advance the interests of an oppressed or marginalized out-group. Allyship is part of the anti-oppression or anti-racist conversation, which puts into use social justice theories and ideals. None of those other dictionaries get that definition. And we were like, okay, so we're using this one.
Yes.
We're going with this one, okay.
Yes. It did not even come close to it. And I think we could have a whole another episode on why Wikipedia isn't considered reliable.
Right.
Why? Because I think that's rooted in some credentialism. You don't have to have credentials to know what you're talking about. Some people live experiences and can type a page on it. But you know what? Reel it back. Yes, I think with those definitions in mind, the last piece that we want to share with you all is what it means to us and what it looks like for us. And to share about my approach, I take a huge responsibility in being an ally because I have various inherited and acquired privileges. And we noted this a little bit earlier. I can share some examples. Again, being a cis woman is an inherited privilege. I didn't ask for that to be the case, but I was born with that privilege. But I've also acquired educational privilege by having the opportunity to be in educational settings and get those degrees that I just shitted on a little bit ago, right? But the reality is that has given me access that allows me to then stand in front of a room and say, hey, I have my credentials. Now listen to me talk about these topics. And the reality is I'm very committed to that. I am not an educator per my job description. It's not really on there, but it's what they get and it's what I do. It's what I'm committed to doing, right? So while my job is to be an advisor, really what that means is that any chance that I get to create a new workshop, to facilitate a new training, a conversation, create a safe or debriefing safe space, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it, whether that's to my job, for my students, and for ZCI, right? So I get to navigate, again, having a set of inherited privileges that put me in a place in which I can put myself a little bit closer to the forefront in being an ally and having these conversations. But I also do make choices. I make choices about who my audiences are and about who I want to spend and give my time to educate, right? Because the labor doesn't always have to be placed on me. Not everybody has to hear or learn from me. I very much think that there's so much labor that goes into educating people around you that for me is I make choices, right? And again, I really can only hope that other people can make similar choices, that once you identify communities that you want to advocate for, and particularly if you hold privileged identities within those communities, that you're making the choice to educate others about it, right? And to put yourself at the forefront of doing the labor while centering the voices of the communities that you're trying to uplift. I really think that sometimes when we're learning about our privileges, we could get stuck on this piece around feeling guilty or not
Mm-hmm.
knowing what to do with them or not wanting them. But that hinders actual productivity, right? That hinders action-based allyship. So while it's difficult to unlearn all those concepts and all those things that we've been trained to do, we have to do it. We have to do it. And that's what allyship means to me, that folks around me can at least be committed to sitting with themselves and sitting with those different balances, and then
Mm-hmm.
making the choice to be an ally, right, where that room is and where the opportunity is there. So that's what allyship means to me.
Oh my goodness. Isn't Gabby just great? She's just so
Oh my
much
god,
fun. I
stop
love her.
it, stop
Okay, okay,
it.
okay, okay. But allyship to me is basically understanding that when I do speak up on something that I'm not complaining just to complain. I feel like growing up, especially in the workplace now, it's very nerve-wracking for me to speak up for fear of being viewed as an angry Black woman or an angry queer Black woman, which can be a whole episode in itself, but I digress. But the allyship is supporting me while I'm standing firm on my words, because I refuse to let a system that attempted to diminish people before me diminish me currently. I refuse that. And knowing that in this fight, that is not just to better my own community, but also assist with others, marginalized groups as well too. Like I'm in this fight with everyone around me. And it's also knowing, and it means that it's more than just hoping or fighting for equality, but knowing that the fight is for equity, not equality, equity in all aspects. So we're talking about in the workplace, with policies and laws, with property and real estate, with stocks and investments, and with education, because literally there's still systemic and institutionalized oppression to many marginalized groups at these schools that we have attended or currently attending. So I need to remember, just tell you all that we have to continue to recognize this and call this out, okay? But that's what allyship means to me, is that supporting me and also standing firm with me.
Yeah, definitely. I think it speaks to what really inspired us to create So Basically and to create the podcast and this platform. And really, for me, the how personal allyship could be, right? To me, it's personal. It's why so far in what we've done with our podcast and sharing our stories, but also sharing the stories of the people that we love and that we're close with, is because we hope that as a listener, you're either seeing yourself in those stories, identifying and finding community, or if you are listening and you've never experienced anything like what we've shared, that you're using that as a learning opportunity and understanding that the things that maybe people present to you in a textbook or in a training is actually just real people. It's things that real people live and that somebody else got to call something, right? To put a name to it, to help others try and understand how to advance, the needs of those communities. I think you can do one or the other, you can do both, right? But that's our goal and that's our hope with our platform, that there is something about the conversations that resonates with you or that teaches you something, because the reality is that small actions have big impacts. There's a bigger picture here, and we're going to transition a little bit into talking about what's the big picture or the bigger picture when we're talking about allyship.
All right, so we're gonna, of course, like Gabby mentioned, we're gonna switch over to the biggest picture. So, like we mentioned with the reactions that we wanted you to use, this is where we're gonna go ahead and use the heart emoji in this segment. So heart, 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 if anything resonates with you. So since we talked about what allyship is not, what it is, we're also gonna be talking about some current events that are happening right now that literally shows an example of the opposite of allyship. So I don't know if you pay attention to news that's going around, well, in the world, of course, but also just in the US right now. Alabama actually just voted and approved a bill that bans gender-affirming healthcare for transgender minors. Mind you, they passed this bill literally while there were protests going on at the Capitol in Montgomery at the same time. But this bill basically bars medical professionals from administering hormones or puberty blockers to anyone under the age of 19. In addition, it prohibits gender affirming surgeries for this group as well. So any doctor that participates in trying to even assist and helping these people will literally face prison time, malpractice lawsuits, violations, things of that sort. The list can go on and on. Now, mind you, during the whole process of getting this bill approved, they had multiple people come as witnesses that came forward, including medical professionals as well too, stating that genital surgeries are not performed on minors, and even came down to the discussion of hormones and puberty blockers. And literally medical professionals testified that patients are heavily monitored, and still all testimonies were pushed to the side and the bill was approved. Okay, so that's just a reminder. This just passed literally last week, 2021. Okay, so these Alabama lawmakers are literally putting trans youth at risk of losing life-preserving care due to their identity. Now, 2021, y'all, last week. So that's something we want to think about too. So this is literally the opposite of allyship.
Yeah, 100%. It shows us what the opposite could look like, right? Even in the piece around the fact that this legislation was created to ban a practice that doesn't happen. Like they literally want to ban something that already doesn't take place, all really in the name of denouncing, right, a different lifestyle than the one that's accepted by society. So I think that's what that teaches us. That's what that tells us. And to sort of start wrapping things up before we head into the Q&A, you know, there is an impact and there is an opposite of ally. When we're talking about allyship being a verb, when you're doing something, the act of doing the opposite is not, right? So to not be an ally really means to be oppressing the queer community. There's no neutral place here. If you ever feel like you get to take a neutral stance in any issue, more likely than what's that saying? More times than not. More likely than not. Yes, more likely than not. You're in the I lost my words for 10 seconds. More likely than not, you're on the privilege spectrum, right? Because you don't get to make that choice. Folks don't get to make a choice. Queer folks and trans folks don't get to make a choice about who they are and how they're received by society. So you cannot be neutral. You're either being an ally or you're further oppressing or further upholding homophobic practices and actions and cultures. And we don't want to do that.
Can I just tell you one thing? When I did more research, the irony is that now this is again going over to the House to go ahead and vote on it as well. But the act that it's under is called the Compassion Act. And I was like, compassion where?
Of course.
For who?
Of course.
What's happening? It literally it doesn't make sense to me. Like, make it make sense.
Right. It's part of the tactics that are used, right? Especially when you're talking about then, you know, voting and the way that people receive and understand information. It's all a tactic, but it's all with one goal in mind, right? Which is further oppress trans folks in this particular case. So unfortunate for sure. Again, you cannot be neutral. Allyship requires action. It requires solidarity. It requires the 4 things that we talked about: action, listening, learning, and yielding. And after tonight's conversation, we really hope that, again, you think of the challenge and of the questions that we posed earlier. What are you going to start doing? What are you going to stop doing? And what will you continue to do in order to be a better ally? I think we'll leave it at that. I think we'll leave it at that.
Okay, so now is the time. So we have reached the Q&A portion of our episode today. So it is definitely time. We've been waiting. I've been waiting for this one. TikTok's in my head. I apologize. It's time to hear from our live audience, from any of you folks that have any questions or anything. Tell us how you feel.
For sure. We really love the fact that we have as live of an audience as it's possible during a pandemic. So if you have a question or comment, just go ahead and put it in the chat. Say you have a question. I know we asked y'all earlier to write your questions down. We do want to be able to hear you ask the question, though, so we can call on you, or you could just unmute yourself. When you speak, it's helpful if you just share with us your name, your pronouns, and this is your chance. Yes or no? Does pineapple belong on pizza?
She had to bring it up. All right, I'm taking notes here
It's
now.
a part of it. It's a part of your intro. You say your name, you say your pronouns, and then I hear a yes or a no. And then you drop your question. So the floor is open. Any questions y'all have for us today? Let me see. Let me open the chat because I can't see.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bianca.
Oh, thanks, B.
Any comments?
Yeah, any comments?
Stories?
I can go. So PK, she, her, and hers, and team no pineapple on pizza.
Way to start off strong. Thank you, PK.
Yeah, of course. I just want to say it's really amazing just to like really be in this space with you ladies. I think I've definitely learned a lot of that acronym that you guys provided us is something that I will definitely continue to share as well. And I think just how natural you guys speak and talk and share your experiences and knowledge. I just want to say like it's amazing. I listen to you guys in the car and I'm just like I feel like I'm with you guys the whole entire time. So I think just so much like you guys just create such a welcoming space, and I just want to say thank you again for being here with Tau Chapter and everyone else who joined us tonight. So yeah.
Thank you, PK.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Of course.
Thanks for listening and thanks for agreeing with me.
Yeah, of course. There was like this one part of the podcast to like drink your water, and I'm just like, okay, let me grab my water bottle, and just like it was so great.
Well, you've set the cue.
Okay, because I was gonna wait till the end. I didn't want to like throw it out right away. But once again, PK, you just really just set the tone really well. Just agreeing with the no pineapples.
Yeah.
Staying hydrated, and you're reminding yourself to stay hydrated. So everyone, drink your water.
My name's Leticia, she, her, hers. Also a huge fan of your podcast, but pineapple does go on pizza. Agree with the Canadian bacon, makes it 100 times better. Add a couple of green peppers in there and you're set to go. But like I said, a huge fan. So it's always really cool to hear you guys, especially being over here in the Midwest. We don't get the same perspective or even get to share or hear experiences as much. And like, it's very close down over here. So just to hear all of your experiences and just to hear everything that you go through from this side is really cool. And just to even have an event like this too is really awesome to have a safe space like this. So thank you all for creating that space. And I guess my question is, when are you guys coming over here since we've already gone over there?
Oh, not the call out.
Right, she's yelling. She's yelling so loud right now.
Oh.
It's a we want you here.
Honestly, it's just so cold.
Right.
So
you got like 2 weeks to come. Like you come
it's almost
like
summer.
The end of June and then July.
Okay. So yeah. That would probably be the best time. Now, when you say warm, like what degree?
Yeah, we need a number.
Fahrenheit degree
we need a number.
We're working with.
So we're like coming on to like 60 degrees, high 50s right now, which is like pretty hot here. Like we're about to start putting shorts on, type of thing.
It's summertime, guys.
Yeah.
Excuse me. What?
You come.
Yeah.
But you come in July, you got like 70-degree weather. Sleepless summer.
So that's hot. That's the hottest we're working with.
Yeah, like 80 degrees is like kind of rare.
Oh wow.
But we get there sometimes.
Okay. Okay.
They're like pass.
But I had to put them on the spot.
She did, because she knows exactly how I feel, because I've said it many times. But I will say this, going back to the first part that you shared, I do appreciate hearing that you all are happy with what we've talked about, but also with what we share, because we did think about that, right? We're two California girls who just talk shit, and we were just like, wait, okay, how are these things gonna sit with folks? Are we saying too much? Are we pushing too hard? And if we are or aren't, it's I mean, we wouldn't be us and we wouldn't be so basically if we weren't pushing. So we appreciate that you all, especially since you all listen, you knew where you were signing up for. So hopefully you're not too disappointed.
Right.
Yeah, it's just too cold for me. I'm not gonna lie. I was cold when we were all in NOLA last year and y'all were walking around in like tank tops and shorts. And I'm just like, wait, it's so cold. Like, why are we doing this? But I believe I did make the commitment at some point to Leticia. So you'll catch us out there. You'll catch us out
Right.
there.
The plan
Or
is
just
to go there for
or
sure.
just stay inside.
Right.
Can we stay inside? Yeah,
Just
I
have
like
a winter coat ready for me. Greatly appreciated.
We'll keep our winter coats out.
Perfect.
Yeah, I have, I guess, like a comment. I'm Dina, she, her, hers. And like real quick with the pineapple, I'm not mad at it, but like, do I prefer it? No. So I'm indifferent, but I guess like,
put her on the yes.
like, I know something that I used to do like in the past was like, I think you guys touched on this earlier, but like kind of like almost like outing your friends in a way, like you're kind of like providing that information when it's like not yours to give. And like yeah, I used to do that. Like I didn't really think twice about it until like I seen like a video or something about it, and then like I you know, I had to check myself, and I was like, you know, like, okay, like, well, why is this a problem? Like, and like kind of like dig into it a little more, and like I haven't done it since, you know, and it's something that I actively work on and just trying to make sure, you know, I'm being conscious about it. But like I think something that's like important too, like with like just, you know, learning, I guess like the L or the L part in the ally with learning, like is like not be like too hard on yourself about it, because it's kind of like, at least for me, like, you know, it's like I really like stand for this community, and like I don't want to like seem like I'm a terrible person, and you know, stuff like that. So I think it's very easy to like beat yourself up over that kind of stuff, but it's like, you know, it's okay, take a little chill break, you know, like it's okay. People like learn and regrow, and that's like what, you know, I feel like that process is all about, like just taking, like checking yourself and be like, okay, and like I guess I'm like stumbling over my words, but I feel like as long as you're actively, you know, yeah, like checking yourself, then like you're not a terrible person per se, and like I think that part is just very, very important, especially for people like, you know, myself, who tend to be like kind of harder on themselves. So.
Yeah, I know for me, I definitely did that. I had to grow out of that as well too. I noticed I did that, and I, as soon as I said it, like I added one of my friends. I was having a conversation with a group of friends. As soon as I said it, something didn't feel right, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" So when I actually caught it with my friend about it and had the conversation, and I was telling them like, I'm really sorry and I really apologize. And well, one, they were like, you know, it's a growing process. It's a learning process. So it's like, they were a little flustered that I did do it. They were honest about that. And I do appreciate them being honest. But they were also like, what was the point of mentioning it? And that's what really got me, because I was like, why? Yeah. Because I'm like, like, is that a description that ties to them? And especially if they're not comfortable with that, you know, identity yet, or they might not identify as that at all. So that was the other thing as well, too. It's like, what was my reason for even mentioning it in the conversation? So that was definitely a learning point for myself, too. So we all definitely have our moments in that.
Yeah, for sure. I could definitely relate to, again, going back to the like, the well-intended progressive assumptions, right? One of the things that I remember a situation too for me was also outing somebody under the assumption that they were looking for community, right? So you meet folks, and then you meet other queer folks, and you're like, wait, my two queer friends have to meet. Not everybody's actually looking for that, right? And again, it goes to the listening and to the respecting people's boundaries, right? When folks want you to share, then you share, but it's really not your place. And whether there is a good intention behind it or not, it also could really just be an assumption. And we don't function off of assumptions around here, right? So I think there is definitely something to say around being able to also like recognize something that big. That was very difficult for me when I was called in about that situation. I remember like feeling terrible and wanting to get stuck in that guilt part. but to be able to say like, you know what, nope, I don't get to feel bad about myself, right, for outing somebody else. How do they get to feel? So great lesson to share. I think something that happens often because of, again, those progressive assumptions that we may be making about folks. Thank you for sharing. If there aren't any more questions, folks, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. That's all that we have time for. We do want to end and wrap up with our normal snaps. So we have, hold on, try to find my mic. Snaps. This episode's snaps go out to Elise, who's on the call with us today. Shout out. Everybody gives your favorite reaction. Elise is the amazing radiant lady that put this event together. She coordinated all details for us offline, kept us on track when I wasn't saying her a bye.
Right.
Yeah, not playing.
Listen, I was so grateful. And really, it was just so awesome to be able to connect with her, but really to be here, and again to know that y'all are not only just like listening to us and supporting us as sorors, but also really wanting to bring us to share space with y'all. So really appreciate. Shout out to y'all. Snaps to Elise.
Thank you.
So it has been a really, really fun ride. And once again, we appreciate everyone coming out to our first live episode of So Basically a Podcast, but especially here at the Tau Talk event. First of all, love that name. So cute. Love that. But just a reminder what our podcast is all about. It is about queer stories, our bond through sisterhood, and of course, our blunt, semi-filtered thoughts, because we need to keep our jobs.
That's right. You can tune in on Wednesdays, sometimes Fridays. It really depends for new episodes every 2 weeks. You can listen to us on Spotify, YouTube, and SoundCloud at So Basically the Podcast. And on Instagram, which is our main hub, you can find all of our direct links on Instagram. It's at So Basically _ the podcast, or Twitter, which is at _ So Basically pod.
But like Abby mentioned, you can find us anywhere on our social media platforms. But don't forget to like and comment on our episodes, because we love to hear people's thoughts when they're here and when they're listening. And then also, if you have a story that you want to share as well with us, and we can go ahead and feature it on our show. Oh, of course, if you're only comfortable with it, feel free to DM us on any of our platforms, or you can also just email us at sobasicallythepodcast@gmail.com, because we got an email. We're official, y'all. And then just another reminder, it has definitely been a pleasure to be with all of you today, this evening, different time zones and all that. And once again, also, don't forget to drink your water. Stay hydrated. Hydration is key. But also, once again, I am the Black Maria Show, and I'm my co-host,
Cabrona Logic.
Yes, and Uni out.
What